stuff like that. There are magazines out there, and your 4-H's also do programs through that. And that'd be a connection. Show them those magazines and how photography can be a in for that. Also, the main thing, don't forget, there are digital magazines, and that's where most everything is driving towards now. It's not just the print. They're going to be more interested in possibly looking at the digital side of it. So mention those type of avenues that they have, because that's going to draw their interest more times than not than the print version. Sad to say, but I hate to see it, and hopefully it's well past my lifetime, but we're going to a more digital world, especially after this, I'm afraid. So remember those avenues. Videos. Video has become such a big industry. You can do this, and this one will definitely take some funds to put it just, that's just what it is. It's going to take some money if the library is wanting to work with them. Or if you can find some free apps, sometimes you can find this, but the avenues that you can do, help them create. We have, news videos. We have a young gentleman in one of our libraries that he goes in, I think it's once a month. He develops a script. The librarian has a green screen and a camera, and these can be cell phones. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. But he's doing a weather forecast because he's interested in weather, but also being a meteorologist. And she bought this green screen, and he's going in, like I said, I think it's once a month. He's developing his script, and he's actually doing it. She's helping him out, and they're both working on the editing portion of it, and then they're putting it out. I think she's putting it out on Facebook. She's not actually putting it out on YouTube, because YouTube has some funny rules that you have to apply by that others don't necessarily have. So there's an avenue that you can connect with videos. But it's not just news. You can do movies. And then, like I said, in bold and red, YouTube. As Mary and I were talking yesterday, this is a big industry right now. It doesn't matter what you're interested in. If you try to do something different, or even if you try to do something that's tried and true, if you get enough viewers and you're good enough on camera, you have a career just by doing that. There are several people on YouTube that's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
Make enough money.
They've made a lot of money.
I said, again, like I said, YouTube has a lot of rules that you have to follow, especially the copyright rules. Even if it's like a review video, there are copyright and fair use laws that do fall within that. However, because YouTube has their own policies about copyright, you will still be struck. And if you get struck enough times, you can be suspended or even have your account pulled from YouTube. So even though there are leeways for review sites, YouTube does not give you that leeway. So you have to watch out what you put on YouTube. That's why with all the story times that are being put on YouTube, we always say double check with your publisher, especially a lot of those, I guess you'd call it kind of a gift where the publishers gave some leniency with libraries telling online story time, and some put them on YouTube. A lot of those time frames have expired. You might have to go to those publishers again and double check to make sure they're still willing to let you put those up on YouTube. Because I came from a small town before I became the consultant here in Southwest. I was director there, and there was a couple of different times. Just took one person. It changed the way the library had to do business, because it was like, they are correct. We have to do a change. We had to do a mea culpa, and thankfully it didn't happen all the time. But again, one person can make a difference. So remember that. Challenges that you will face. This is the hardest part of all as well. But before we go into that, is there any other ideas that anybody came up with? Like anything in the chat or anybody that wants to mention?
No, but I wish they wouldn't be so shy, that they would open up their mics and talk. It's okay. I know we're not in person, but you can unmute your little mic and talk. So want to encourage our participants.
How many, I'll ask this question, how many are actually open to the public now? Even if it's at a limited basis, how many are open? And you can put that in the chat, that's fine. So Mary, you had your hand raised, so you're open limited or? You're muted, Mary.
We're at regular hours.
Okay. So this is a possibility you can, for you, if you have the space or have an area where you can, I assume you're still trying to do the social distancing, and if somebody wants to wear a mask or if it's a mandatory, be mindful. I don't always wear a mask everywhere. My son does. When he goes into a store, I usually put mine on as well, but usually it's the bigger stores that I wear that. If I'm in an enclosed area like now, Kelly's in the office, but we're in completely two different rooms.
Mhm.
So I feel it's comfortable that we know we're separated far enough.
We do have some in the chat for you, Richard. It's
Okay.
we have from Jay Johnson. Public is open completely. I believe that you guys have a mask requirement. We have St. Francis is open. Sharon Springs Public Library is open. Colby is, just not on Sundays. We have Lenora, we are open our regular hours. Marcy and Goodland, we are open. Sarah, we are open our regular hours in Hoxie. So those are
Okay.
some of the ones in the chat.
Okay. Something that just popped into my head that you could do, since we were talking about masks, and I know sometimes these are hard to come by, but if you can find them, maybe get some of those disposable masks, or if you can even find some cloth masks that are just white, turn that into a craft with your teenagers, especially in the art craft. Have them design a personal face mask. That might be something that, given the time, and that'd be something that they could show their personality on instead of buying them off of some site. Because like I told my wife, the PPE industry and the cleaning industry, they are making a killing right now. So, yeah, but if you can possibly provide something like that, especially the disposable masks, you could use maybe markers, colored markers, or with fabric, you can use fabric paint after they draw the image on there with a pencil possibly. Something that's a little bit different that might be able to be used.
Would that compromise the mask though, if you do marker and things on the outside of them? Are you sucking that in? I mean, it might be better for them to make some, bring in some sewing machines and let them make some.
And that's a good idea too, Mary, to have them bring in their fabric that they like and find and make them that way.
Yeah.
That's another avenue for that. So yes, definitely do that.
Yeah, my mom and I did that during the initial thing because the nursing homes and things that I served through the talking books, they needed some, so we donated those, and yeah.
So just anything you can think of. Again, like I said, I cannot think of everything. I'm not going to sit up here and say I do. I am definitely flawed, and my memory is definitely flawed with my ages now as well. So, so anything that's of advantage, take it and run. One of the other things I will mention as well with the author events, if you're working with a teenager and they're interested in writing or poetry or artwork, anything that's kind of in those lines, you can give them authors or artists emails, because sometimes they do allow their personal emails to go out there, and have them have a direct line to that individual, and that way they can get some critiques. Sometimes it might be better if you do the introduction. You can say, I have this individual that you will be getting an email from, mention who you are, you're the director of a library. That way the author or the artist know that they are dealing with a teenager that is interested. Because I'm not going to say all again, but the majority of the individuals in creative ideas and careers, they are interested in helping growing the next generation of authors and painters and drawers. More times than not, they are interested in trying to help out. And you might be that avenue because you're a professional. You can give a little bit of a weight behind just a teenager saying, can you help me? You might actually say you've been visiting with that teenager for however many weeks or months. They're definitely interested. Would you help them out and give them some ideas or critiques?
We
So
do
that's
have
great.
something in the chat I'll share. Sharon Van Allen says, I think a great idea with kids is to share apps that they like and that are appropriate. I discovered one called ChatterPix that makes anything talk. So that was a good little suggestion. Thank you, Sharon.
And apps is a very dynamic field at the moment. New apps, especially if it's unique. I mean, okay, let's go back a few years, and some people will cringe, some people might laugh, but Angry Bird.
Yeah.
That made those two individuals millionaires on just a simple phone app.
Yep.
You never know what's going to hit. So you never know. Keep that in mind. But if there's nothing else, we'll go to some of the challenges, which I know everybody faces. And it's not the portion you really like to talk about. But was there anything else, Mary, before we jump on down the list?
No, we do not have anything else in the chat right now, but I encourage you, if you're not going to talk, to chat, please.
Okay, of course, everything hinges on money, as everything does in the world. So you might, if you're not the director, you might visit with your director or visit with the board. If your director will give you permission, or if you are the director, visit with your board to invest in the teenagers in your community. Sometimes they don't think about it until you mention it. And it's one of those that if it's put to the side, it's not thought about. You don't think about it. Sometimes just that one life changed can be so much, and it's so gratifying. But more times than not, you will help out more people than just one. Try to be mindful of the budget. If you can do things for free, definitely try to do that avenue first. But if you hit a roadblock and do need some funds, go to them and then see if you can work something out. And as you see on the very last point on the other side, there's possibly grants available that you could look into as well. Teens that are interested might not be able to go to your library. And not just because of what's happening now, but because they don't have a car or anyone to drop them off. And the next point goes in line with that. The library doesn't have to be just four walls. You can actually go out into the community again, granted, talk to your director if you're not the director, talk to your board if you're the director, and mention what you want to do. Go out to your community. At this point in time, it's still nice enough weather. Maybe meet at a park and do something there. And it could, and if it's a drawing class, bring some boards and paper so that they have something that they can draw on. If there's benches, because you're not going to be able to lay paper on the bench itself, because they're going to be either warped wood or that grated metal. So you're going to want to bring something that they could actually draw on or paint. Or if they're writing exercises, bring a clipboard and paper so they can write on that again, because what you'll have there might not be what they have. Or just to see what their interests are. Try to do a program out in the wild. If there's I'm not sure how big your communities are or not, but if you have an area where they have a recreation building or someplace, that's separated in your community, like our library was in one part of town, our rec building was in a different part of town. See if you can use the rec building to maybe meet a certain group of kids over there to make it a little easier for that area's teenagers to meet you. Or if your school is divided up into your town, the elementary and high school are different areas relative to your library. See if you can use a classroom there or the auditorium or the gym. That'll definitely help with the social distancing aspect of it. And work with your community leaders and your community organizations and work with that. And part of it could be an after-school program that you could develop in the gym. And I don't know about us, but I know some schools might not have sports for a while, so you could utilize those gyms for a different area. Or a lunchroom. If they fold up their tables during a regular session, you could possibly unfold some of the tables and do it there. So just think of things outside the box of what you could possibly do. The other thing, this is where, again, pre-COVID, after COVID hit, this is a little bit harder to do. If there is something in the area that might be of interest for a teenager, try to make an event out of it and try to get them there. Talk with their parents, because the parents might not even know they're interested. And if they know that they're interested, they might take them. Because some, kids are shy sometimes, even with their parents. And if they won't, maybe look at what you have available to you. Sometimes the schools might allow you to use like their vans, get another adult for supervisory reasons, but however many you can fit in that van to accommodate social distancing within your community, if you have it, or if not, and take them to the event. Be ready to follow the event's rules. That way nobody's caught by surprise, so you might call ahead on that. Or just give it out there and everybody meet up if they're able to get there. But if the kids don't have a ride or anything, you might try to see if you have an SUV and you know some friends, work with them and they might be willing to help you out and get kids there. If it was pre-COVID, I would say just everybody climb into the car and go, because that's what I did one time with a group of teenagers. We went and saw a movie together that everybody was interested in with the club that we had at the library. We got back and then went home. We had a great time. But post-COVID, you're going to have to adapt a little bit and see if you can work with the parents or possibly somebody within the community that will help you. I know senior centers sometimes will have buses. See if they might be willing to use their bus and do the social distancing that way. Maybe even the school. We had a good relationship with our schools, so even our churches sometimes would utilize the schools' buses, and a lot of the times the drivers would donate their time. Sometimes if they wanted a fee, they would try to work up and make it available to pay that driver. So just kind of work with your community. I think once they know there's an interest and you can show them that you can be safe and show them that you will control things as best you can, even with this post-COVID world, I think there are still avenues you can still do some things for your teenagers.
And I think
Grants, of course, I mentioned as well, but that's pretty much it for this section. So Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that our librarians, you guys have been rock stars this summer. And I know that a lot of you have already done some like out of the box programming and done a lot of virtual things for your younger, the school aged kids, but kind of extend that to your teens. And some of you might already have done that for the teens. I know that I feel like the presence on Facebook, not so much, but more so Instagram or any of that. If that's what you want to reach, you have to go, like Richard said, to where they are at. I know a lot of our libraries have Facebook pages, but just also, I want to encourage you to do an Instagram or that way you can kind of reach them. I mean, I don't even know. There's probably new apps that they're on. I don't know, but I think that I just wanted to say that our librarians have done a great job of thinking outside of the box. So COVID has been a challenge, but with that challenge, I think a lot of adaptations have had to already occur. So yeah, just talk with each other. And I definitely want to follow up on this workshop and see what some of the things are that you've kind of thought of. And I know that Richard probably in Southwest, that would be great because we've combined before to do workshops. So it would be a great one if we can socially distance and actually meet in person would be great. And Richard said that he would follow up with smaller groups so that we could do that. So we'll probably do areas where we can come together and, create some ideas and even learn on how to do some of these things that have been shared, like the apps. If that's something, we can have the technology there and you can play with that so that you become more familiar with some of the apps that are out there. So yeah.
And if you do happen to know any of the links or anything, type those in the chat windows so people can find those.
Absolutely.
But good to hear that everybody's adapting. I know that's usually our case from the library world, but we definitely, the whole world's adapting now. So it's great to hear that it's not getting us down. We're stepping up to the plate and moving forward. Sacrifices. How many of you have done sacrifices? That's pretty common, I think, in the library world to a degree. Dealing with teens, there's going to be some sacrifices as well. That's just part and par for the course in our community. Be prepared to what you might have to do. If you show an interest, do not stop showing an interest for a teenager. That's the quickest way to make a teenager get into a downward spiral. And that will lead them not to trust in you again. So once you start a relationship, you're in that relationship. If you stop it, even if it's unintentional, kind of pay attention to what you're doing. Even if you just, they might come by and stand by your desk and you're busy doing something else. Be aware of your surroundings. If they're there, stop, visit with them. It's just you not even visiting with them might stop that relationship. And in their mindset, they don't really care. They just had I was just their interest at the moment. I was their pet project, and they don't care right now. Some teenagers will be a little bit stronger, but there are some that will be that way. So be ready to, when you start a relationship, there's going to be a little bit of commitment there. And part of that is the next bullet point. Be prepared for some difficult conversations. They might open up to you after they get to know you better than they will to their parents or their friends, because you are a little bit separated out of their lives. They know that you don't have a direct connection to their friends or parents. So it might feel a little bit safer to them. So be prepared for some difficult conversations. Some of you do this already to a degree, because sometimes it's just, I'm interested in this topic. And it's a topic that's, controversial or not readily accepted, and you help them out. Sometimes that's hard for them to open up. And again, once you let them open up and you show an interest, if you close that door, more times than not, the individual will take that hard. And like I said, it will be a downward spiral for them. And it could lead to them not even trusting other adults. So be mindful when you're starting to create a relationship, and be ready for those difficult conversations. And it might be you are talking to somebody about, you don't want to take your life. If they get to that point where they are comfortable enough with you, or you see something happening with them and you've built a relationship up and you see something's off, and just the simple question, are you all right? I notice you're a little down today. That might open up a floodgate. Be prepared for that floodgate. You might go home in tears that night, but try to help that individual as best you can. Show them that you are concerned. Show them that you care. So be mindful. Be mindful. Definitely be mindful. When they come to you, they want the truth. They don't want you to sugarcoat stuff. It's basically take them seriously, and they will take you seriously. Don't treat them as a child. That's one of the hardest things. And again, this is why it's a little bit difficult to teach some of these, because it does bring up memories. Pardon me, didn't think this would hit me as much as it is. They warn everybody about this, but it can bring up memories that are difficult. Just don't treat them as a child. Treat them like an adult. Treat them seriously. Anything in the chat, Mary, while I compose myself?
No, you take your time. You take your time, because that was one of the things that Richard had shared with me prior to this, that we needed to be kind of prepared for, because it does hit you, and you do remember some of the things that when you were a teen, and it is hard. It's like, I think that's the one part that we sometimes try to think of activities we can do. What can we do for them? But more than that, it's the relationship. So thank you, Richard. That is something that I think that we're not always cognitive of, that those relationships can be very, very important, you know, and they're, you know, sometimes it's more like, oh, well, they're here every afternoon. I don't know what they're doing here, but they're there for a reason. So take those opportunities to really start a conversation. And like Richard said, don't stop. Once you start, that's our job. It's not just the books. We work with the public, we work with people. So those relationships are so important.
Anything in the chat by any chance? And thank you.
We've got at the end, can Richard briefly touch base on how to overcome the difficulty of female librarians dealing with male teens or vice versa? That's a very good question, Sharon, you know, because sometimes it's easier, some of those relationships than others. So
Sometimes, to be honest, being a female, it'll be easier for a young man to open up to you than it will be to another man. So if you, and sometimes it's different, sometimes it's not that way, but sometimes it is a little bit easier. The main thing is showing the interest, showing that you care. Like I've been
Right.
saying, and Mary kind of reiterated. It's going to take a little bit of time, a lot longer to develop that relationship. And then when you develop that relationship, when you can direct them back into careers that they could possibly approach with it, by connecting them with even if it's just a college professor that you're connecting with, you're setting them on a career path possibly. Because some kids are just interested to be interested. Some kids are being interested because this is what they want to do with their life. And sometimes you have to swallow, well, don't swallow, be truthful. If they're saying, I want to be the next, you know, I want to draw from Marvel Comics. I'm just drawing on my comic background. Be honest with them, saying it's a tough industry. It's a long road ahead. Going to be a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be challenging you. But move forward. I'll help you out as best you can to making those connections. But it will take, and again, it's even harder, I think, probably, and it might be the same way the other direction. I don't know. You would have to answer this for me. Is a girl going to be more apt to open up to a man more than a woman librarian because they know there's no, to me, I see it as there's no pressure of gender responsibility sometimes that we project. Because with me talking to a young man, sometimes we get along fine, but then there's sometimes they're like, you know, what is this person going to think of me if I say I'm interested in this? They're going to think I'm a child or I don't care.
Silent judgment.
Right, silent judgment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, because I think that sometimes you feel like you'll get more of that from the same sex than the opposite sex. You know, it just depends. You know, if you've opened up that avenue for, like, you know, they come in every afternoon and you just say hi every day, or you ask them how it's going. It just depends. I think that, I mean, I worked with some teens when I did the cross country team, even though I was a first grade teacher when I lived in Maine. And I was sort of surprised how much they'll open up to you, kids that, you know, I'd only worked with the younger ones, so I didn't have a lot of experience with teens. So yeah, it definitely does I mean, I think the biggest part is that they can see you, that you're being honest and genuine, you know, with wanting to interact with them or listen to them. So yeah, they can sense that.
And it's like Mary said, it's not just saying hi every day. It's paying attention and grabbing their interest. There was one young gentleman, and it was a little bit after high school, so he's a little bit older than a teen, but he had a lot of tattoos. And he was a quiet individual, and he came into the library. Even as a teenager, he was fairly quiet, and we didn't really talk. But I was not the frontline personnel. I was back in the office since I was the director, so I didn't have the direct contact as some librarians do. But I went out there and saw him, and I knew him from when he came in. And I saw his tattoos. He had a sleeve. And if you're not unfamiliar with the tattoo world, the sleeve is where they're doing an artwork down their arm, and it's basically creating a sleeve like a shirt. And I saw that, and sometimes you have to, a librarian is a generalist. You know a little bit about everything, but not a whole lot about everything. So I knew enough to have a conversation I see you're working on a sleeve. What are you working on now? Because I see you got an image up there on the computer. And that opened the floodgates right there. We talked for the next 30 minutes about his tattoos, what he was getting ready to do, how he wanted it, and just showing that interest. And it might take some time to build that up, but for some reason that day it just clicked and he went for 30 minutes straight. In other cases, you might show that interest and they might say a little bit and go on, but when they come back in, ask them, it's like, did you get that tattoo that you were working on? Did it turn out well for you? Show that interest and continued interest. That's the main thing. And that's for any teenager, not just a female librarian or a male librarian to the other opposite sex. It's to any person, just continually showing that interest. And eventually, you hate to say this, but eventually you wear them down sometimes. So, and that's kind of what it is. It's persistence sometimes. And there are going to be some kids you just won't be able to communicate with. Sadly, that's just going to be a nature of what happens sometimes. But it's the persistence, showing that interest, and continually showing the interest and visiting with them. And it might just be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or like that one time, it was 30 minutes. And every time he came in after that, if I was out in the library, he would stop and we would talk for however much time he had or I had between projects. So be willing to, and again, this is some sacrifice, be willing to sacrifice some time from your job. Part of being a librarian is communicating and interacting with the community. So some boards kind of frown on that sometimes, especially with directors, because you're supposed to be doing paperwork. But that is a very important part of librarianship, is being there for your community and building those relationships. And it's not just for the adults, it's for the teens as well. So I don't know if I gave you a very good answer. That's about all you can do, though, is just show that interest and continued interest. And eventually you'll wear them down. So, anything else, Mary, before I jump into the few other points here?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I know that quite a few of the librarians that we have joining us right now do work with larger teen groups. So I just wanted to know if anyone would be willing to share a story about, how the interactions have gone. I think I'm thinking particularly of Marcy and Goodland, because we had several years ago, we had a workshop there in Goodland that was dealing with one of the more successful, she had a successful teen group, and she kind of shared the ideas and things. So I didn't know if any of those had kind of stuck and how that was working. I know that, in the larger, not every one of our libraries has a lot of the teens that are coming, but I know that our larger ones and even some of the smaller ones, that those just tend to be the kids that are coming in. So is there anyone that would be willing to share how that has already been going, and what has been successful in your libraries that you could help others with? Don't all raise your hands at the same time. Come on. Oh my goodness. At least put it in the chat. You can work on that and then I'll read it when they get done chatting.
Okay.
Oh my. And this is why we have shy teens, because apparently we have shy librarians today too. So I don't know. This is not that shy of a group, people. Come on.
Yeah, you can't be shy. So if you start a conversation,
I'm thinking, is it like locked? But Mary was able to talk, so I don't think I have the mics locked. I think people can talk. I was like, did I hit a button and maybe lock people out? I don't think so.
That's all right. We'll roll with it. We'll keep going on. If somebody thinks of something going.
Marcy's in the chat. Hold on.
Okay. Okay.
It goes in waves. We'll have big groups of teens that start using the library regularly, and then at other times it seems like no teens are coming in. It makes it hard to plan things. You have to have thick skin, because that is something that you don't think about. When you've worked really hard on a program and then they don't show up for it, that can be pretty devastating too. And then Jay Johnson said, we struggle with getting teens in the library, period. but really bad this year and usually in the summer because they are all working. So that's a good point too. And
There-
Marcy said, you just have to go with the flow. Thank you, Marcy.
Some of the things I always told my staff is, even if it's just one person that comes, it's still an experience for that one person.
Yeah.
If it's a Zoom session, just that one person, they might actually be interacting with 50 or more people because it's a Zoom session. So even though it's just one person, you're just providing a space for them to do the activity. So it is a community. For instance, a lot of and again, this is my background, so apologize, but for sci-fi and comic books, they have conventions. A lot of those are doing them online.
Mhm.
You know,
Oh,
host of
yeah.
viewing.
Yeah, we
There
just had
are
Comic-Con. That was, yeah. Yep.
host of viewing at your library. That might be something to do.
Yeah.
Uh, One of the things that I kind of put out there, and one of the librarians has kind of grabbed onto, and a few others have signed on since, is sometimes look at the unusual stuff. They are bringing in a paranormal investigator for a program. And even though a lot of people say scoff and scratch their head, that is a really popular area of interest right now.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. I think one librarian said she did it, I think 2 years ago in her community, not with the same person, but a different person. She said her room, and this is pre-COVID, of course, her room was full of people that she was surprised that was there that had an interest. And they stayed there for, I think she said, for 3 hours of people at the end just discussing and sharing their ghost stories of what they had or supposed ghost stories. So you never know what's going to hit. And with the Zoom time frame we are in, even if it's just one person, it might be one person in your location, but again, they might be joined with 50, 100 or more for that session. If it is something that's specifically for your library and you're trying to do a program, you had one person or a small group show up, 2 or 3, that is still an experience for them, and it's an experience for you. You know that you don't want to do a big blown out program again, but you know the teenagers that are interested. You can work with them as a smaller group or one-on-one and make the inroads that way. So it's not a failure in that light. You still found out who was interested, and it gives you an avenue to approach them and visit with them about their interests. See if you can connect them with, like I said, even if it's a college professor or a professional person in the field, and utilize that to move them on their path of, becoming adults. You just never know. So don't always look at everything as a failure, even if nobody shows. You still got to look at that as a success because you found out we don't want to do that again because nobody showed. Now, you might put out a feeler. If something didn't work the first time, let it set for a few years, especially if you're rotating staff and they want to try again. Have them put out a questionnaire or visit with the kids, and if they are interested, try it again. I'm not going to say right away by any means, but if it's a couple of years past, try it again. Because as I think you said it was Marcy that said this, Mary, I
Yeah.
might be wrong.
Nope, you got it.
It's cyclical. It's up and down.
Yeah.
Interest will be high in one thing, then it'll decline, and then a couple of years later, it's popular again. You just never know. So don't always throw all your ideas out. Every so often, I would say maybe every 2 years, pull out your ideas that didn't work and look at your teenage community again, see what they're checking out, see what they are doing in your library, and see if maybe you're actually becoming a little bit of a spy. I'm sad to say, but see what they're looking at on the computer or what they're listening to, as I said, with the music. You might see that there might be an interest in that type of programming now, and you might try it again. But never look at anything as a failure. That's the main thing. That's why I said at the beginning, don't be negative, be positive. Say, yes, it didn't work this time, but it might work in 2 years with a new group of teenagers.
And I think too that you have to remember you have to go where they are. I mean,
Yes.
it is a lot easier with the school age kids because they want to come to where the computers are or they want to come. I mean, again, like Richard said, a lot of this is pre-COVID, and we know that right now a lot of things are still up in the air. But more than any other time, probably in history, we need to be helping all of these kids. And I know it, I mean, sometimes people are like, well, why does it fall to us to do it? Well, I mean, it just is. It's like we are a presence in the community, and I think a lot of times too, I feel like as I get older, now I have grandbabies, but I only know that age now. It's like you have to try to remember what things were like, and like even Richard sharing what was your favorite song in high school, do that activity with your whole staff, you know what I mean, at your library, because that does open up you starting to discuss things we did here. It was like, oh yeah, when I was a teenager, I did that. I'm like, I don't always go back to those memories. There's a lot of real life things happening, and you know, sometimes it does take slowing down. And I would also say too that if you are an older person and trying to work with the teens, that is more difficult. So maybe get a college student, that can come in and to help you with that and that wants to volunteer. Sometimes again, stepping outside of your comfort zone is not fun, but it's sort of a necessary evil.
And visit with your school teachers.
Yeah.
They might allow you to come into their classrooms.
Yep. And we've got some chat. So if you want me to read, I will start reading.
Yeah, before I go on, you can.
Okay. Let's see. We have several years ago, Marcy said, I had a group of young teens that were coming in. They were kids that didn't really fit in with their classmates. They became my library kids. They are all graduated from high school and in college and 21 to 22 years old. We've become each other's family. Absolutely. Thank you, Marcy. And I understand that's not going to happen every year, and it's not going to happen with every group, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like as an adult right now in history, it's a difficult time to be an adult. I can't even imagine what it's like to be a teen or preteen. It's just very, very difficult right now. So maybe they will be reaching out, and hopefully we can be there for them.
Very true. Thank you for sharing that, Marcy. Appreciate it. We got a few more things to go over, and then we can just open it up to discussion as well. The fourth point there is volunteering for the activities. And this one is on there because technically with our jobs, we're not supposed to volunteer at the library because you're a librarian. However, this is where you use the gray areas. And I am not against using the gray areas. They are left gray so that lawyers, anybody that wants to contest it can say there's wiggle room this way or there's wiggle room that way. The wording within the volunteering is you cannot volunteer for the duties that you normally do within your job. The gray area is that if you create a teen council, if you create or if you want to take a group to an activity to a different town and you can arrange it some way or some fashion, or you want to do a Zoom session, and it's, sometimes you can work with your director. If you're the director, you can make your own schedule and say, rearrange the schedule so we're there on library time. But sometimes the sacrifice is on your own time, but all those activities are not normal library activities. Because do you go in every day and take a group to visit an author? No. Do you go in weekly and once a week set up a Zoom session? And this time of the day, maybe, let's say a Zoom session for an author visit? No. Maybe a Zoom session for a library business? Yes. But for an author visit, that's not necessarily library business. That's just an opportunity. So there are some gray areas. You determine what gray areas you want to wade into. I cannot tell you one way or the other where to go. I'm just saying there are gray areas that you can use if you're willing to sacrifice and do some volunteer time. But just be mindful, the wording is, if it's something you do on a normal basis in the library, technically you cannot volunteer for that. That's like if you're going in 30 minutes early to work and processing books and you're not leaving 30 minutes early, you're not supposed to do that because processing books is a normal activity of a library. So look at the gray areas. If you want to try to wait in some of those, visit with your system. They can give you guidance of saying, well, be mindful, but see what you can do and what you can't do. And they'll be a little bit more defined on what you can and can't do. But there are a little bit of gray areas. Let's see, funding a trip. There have been several times, even as I've donated money to my library or prizes to my library, even when I worked there, just because I wanted to do a program or I enjoyed the topic, so I just made a donation. Donating funds is your determination. There, to my knowledge, unless I am missing something within the legal world, there's nothing that says you cannot donate to the company you work for or organization. You are able to. That's a personal choice for you to make and you to make alone. If there's something different there, somebody let me know, because I've been doing it all these years and nobody's ever said anything to me about it. But those are personal, and those bottom two are definitely personal decisions you have to make. If you're uncomfortable with those, don't do anything you're uncomfortable with. The top three, if you start that, be prepared to continue on with that, or it will have some consequences to the individual. Just like I said, be mindful for that. And what can you expect for some of this stuff? Marcy kind of already said some of this. What are the rewards? Well, they continue the relationship into adulthood. Some will keep in touch with you, not all, but some. I have a young man that he's now in his early 30s. I'm in my early 50s, and we've become friends. He will, when I'm in the area, we'll go visit, go goofing around together. He's part of 3 days of one of his vacations. He came over to our house and spent 3 days with us, just because we developed that relationship. And friendships, you'll develop the friendships that way. That's what I was talking about. Or if nothing else, seeing a person develop into a good person. Know that you helped guide that person. That might not come, they might not come back and say this to you, but you know that you had a hand in helping that person along in their life. And sometimes that's forgotten. A lot of times, you know as well as anybody else, life is busy. They might want to say thank you, but where they're at in their life and what they're doing, whether it's a physical distance or they're just busy with work, they can't really communicate, and especially with everything that's happening now. Some will make the intentional effort to communicate, some won't. Just know that when you hear about somebody that's doing something and you help them out with a program, or you led them to a professor or an author to help them out with an interest, and they're actually in the field that they wanted to be in, that's even more gravy for you. If they're not, but they're still in a good job, they're still enjoying life, still know that you had a hand in that as well, because you provided some stability and interest for that person for their later years in life. And sometimes we forget that, especially when we don't get the affirmation given to us. So keep your ears to the ground and you will hear some accolades. Even if you, and especially smaller towns, they'll put in the newspaper of somebody going to a college or somebody doing this. Even though that person's out of town now, because they grew up in the town, they'll put it in the local paper and you'll know that, oh, I knew that person. I actually helped them out in this area or visited with them in this and kind of helped out that way. So sometimes, like Mary was saying, it's you're not noticed. Why do we do this? We don't have to by any means, but we are here with the ability to. If you choose to do so, you can have some rewards out of it. And I'm not going to say it's going to be monetary or praiseworthy, but you never know. We've done some stuff for people in the past. We had some things come up with the teens. We visited with them. The parents got back to the parents, and we got a very sizable donation from that family because we worked with the family and the kids. You just never know where something will come from. Or they'll just come in and say thank you. Or they might come in and be friendly enough with you and give you some information that people say, I did not need to know that, but thanks for sharing anyway. So, they're probably give you two strange examples. One was just a family. We knew each other through the library, became friendly. She embarrassed her daughters so much. We were just talking, and I don't even know where this came up. And one of the ladies was with me as well, and we were doing a fax or copies for her or just visiting, I don't know. But we got in, somehow she started discussing what they were for undergarments. And her daughters were there. And she was like, my daughters got me to wear this. And we're kind of like, we didn't need that image. We didn't want that image, but okay. You just kind of grit your teeth, grin, like, okay, thanks, and go on. The other strange happening is if you're a director or if you're helping with a job search, a lot of times you will leave off with the question, is there anything else you would like to tell us about yourself? We had one young lady, she's probably, if I was guessing, 22, 23. She was like, well, I don't think this will be that big of a deal, but I know, my boyfriend and I kind of got in an argument, and I ran over his foot, and I just decided to back up and run over again. And this was in a job interview. We didn't even know this person they opened up. So you never know what you're going to open up when you approach somebody showing an interest. So be forewarned. You might get some stuff, not just the uncomfortable conversations that are very heavy, but some of the weird ones where you're like, okay, this happened.
TMI.
Yeah. Also, one other thing, I know it wasn't mentioned in there in the slides, but just on a personal note as well, story-wise. We did this for a young gentleman. He was probably 9th grade. He was there, and with filters, you're constantly fighting a battle with putting stuff getting through. And I don't think it was an adult site. I think it was looking at just a catalog that had women's lingerie in it online, and the computers were open. I mean, they're in the public, so somebody saw it. I think it was, the kid that saw it came in and said, oh, they're looking at this, they're looking at this. So instead of just automatically calling the parents saying, we need to have a discussion, I brought the young man into my office, set him down, and I sat at my desk because you don't want to be imposing or a threatening figure. So never stand above them. Be on an equal level if you can, or at least give them the illusion of them being in the upper level, because that gives the illusion of them being in control. But we sat, and I just visited with them. I said, what you were doing wasn't technically inappropriate, but where the situation you are in the public was a little bit inappropriate. And I'm treating you as an adult instead of calling your parents right now. I'm visiting with you personally. I'm going to ask you, or I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to get on the computer for the rest of the week. You can come in next week. No harm, no foul. You get back on, just be mindful of what you're doing. If it happens again, we will be visiting with your parents, and you will be with us. And from that day forward, and this was a troubled child in the community, so it wasn't too unexpected that this would happen from this individual. But in the library, from that point on, we didn't have any troubles. If something did arise up and we said, that's not appropriate, he would say, okay, and he would change. But technically, we didn't have any problems except for maybe one or two other instances while he was going through high school, where other people were having so much difficulty with him, we weren't. And it's because we treated him like a person. We treated him as a, we showed that we cared, and we would work with that individual. So sometimes even with somebody getting in trouble and you're talking with them about something like that, can even lead to a relationship that is kind of surprising. And we talked after that. He wasn't the best of friends of us by any means, but he was talk with us after that even. And especially with me, since I gave him that opportunity to make the change himself. We weren't going straight to the parents and being the snitch, basically. So kind of look at that, look at the situation. If it was a different situation and something that was very criminal or hurtful, yeah, you might have to go to that extreme. But if you can, try to visit with the teenager before you escalate anything. Sometimes you'll get a better response from them, and you'll gain their respect from them as well, because you handle them between yourselves. So that could happen as well. That, in the nutshell, is the presentation. If there's any other comments, suggestions, stories are always great because you still learn from stories. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a library full of them. But always look ahead. Don't look behind. If something failed, it failed. Move forward. When you're dealing with somebody that's done something wrong, do it like I just mentioned here. Make the correction, look ahead, not behind at what they did. Try to overlook those things in the past. Always look ahead, and that will gain you more respect than always looking behind. So, but that is it. I appreciate everybody's attention. If there's any other comments or stories, please. We have some time, I believe, if Mary will let us stay on a little bit longer.
Yeah. And please make sure that you do fill out that survey, because Richard does need those from everyone. So everyone that was in attendance today, I will send out a reminder if Richard will let me know. So I may be bugging you. Please make sure you fill it out. I don't think it'll take that long. But hopefully everyone got that email. If you did not, please let me know. Again, I did put it in the chat, so you can just click on that link and open that up and maybe do it right now. So it's something that's over with and done with. So any questions? Stories? You can always email me, and then I will get those to Richard as well. So, but we do want to thank you everyone for joining us today. And some of you will see back here at 2 o'clock for our meeting. Again, thank you, Richard, for everything and for everything that you shared. So yeah, it's not always easy, but we're here to help each other.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Have
Mary.
a good afternoon. Bye.
Little by little, they're going.